Well, it's a very simple political calculation. Donald Trump isn't very popular in the US, so he needs to rally his base wherever it is. Some of that base is still on X/Twitter. He knows that all of the court cases are great for fundraising. So by making sure he's getting that mugshot out everywhere, he maximizes the fundraising that he does. And it's just a great distraction technique. It has everybody talking. It distracts people from other campaign elements like the debates that Trump is not participating in. So it's just a win-win for him to be back involved in the platform. And with the platform now being run by Elon Musk, it's a more open approach to people like Trump, let's say.
Well, what can you tell us about X lifting a ban on political ads in the US after nearly 4 years?
It's a real mixed bag. So it brings X back in line with most of the other platforms. TikTok is now the only major platform that continues to ban political ads. But what we know from Musk taking over the platform is that he really stripped a lot of the expertise out of that platform in order to reduce costs. So we know that that is going to make it very difficult for X to police what is really going on in terms of this political ad content. We know that they need more money because they've lost about half of their advertising revenue over the past 18 months. So there's a lot of incentives for them to try and get these political ads back on the platform. But we also know that it's a very small sliver of their overall income. So basically, it's a recipe for a lot of misinformation and not a recipe for a lot of income. So there are going to be controversies ahead.
How big a role will social media play in this upcoming US election compared to the previous one?
I think just a bigger and bigger role. Firstly, because nearly every young person is on some form of social platform. So as more of those younger generations reach the age of voting and the people who were never on a social platform age out and aren't here with us any longer, that makes social media a bigger part of the conversation. Also, we now have the rise of these generative AI tools, which means anyone who wants to disrupt the election now has new, cheaper ways to create masses of information, and it's harder than ever to detect what is true and not. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but again, that's just a big risk factor, and X is not, it doesn't have as many people as it needs to manage that process, let's say.
Well, speaking of AI tools, I understand it's now being used for often stressful salary negotiations. You've been researching about this. How can chatbots help?
Yeah, so this is a really small scale initiative at this point, but a company that does a lot of automated negotiations with huge companies like Walmart for products and widgets and things like that. They've started using it to negotiate the salaries inside their own company, a company called Pactum AI. And what they say there is that the chatbot can look through all of the data of every employee that the company's ever had. It can go across comparable organizations and salaries in the industry, and it can negotiate with you all day long. So their argument is instead of having a subjective negotiator that might be biased about you because of your age or your gender, someone who doesn't have a lot of time, they just want the negotiation over with, the chatbot can negotiate as long as you want to negotiate with it in order to come up with a package that suits you. It's a very optimistic version of events, but they say their employees are really enjoying it so far.
Really, it's interesting to hear about their feedback. No doubt there'll be disadvantages too. What would users need to be careful about?
Well, if you're not putting in the right prompts and you're not familiar with chatbots, you might be at a disadvantage. Also, it can just be used to take benefits away from you. If the organization says, hang on, we don't have as much money this year, we're going to have to lose 10% of your package, you choose which 10% to lose, that's still not a good situation for you as an employee. And I spoke to some trade unions as well. They're not against the idea of AI being involved in negotiations, but they and other companies make the point that it's human relationships that should be the core. And maybe AI can assist in this process, but that you shouldn't hand over the entire process to a chatbot.
Indeed, I guess no emotions would be involved. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not so sure. Ryan,
Yeah, some people like to negotiate. That gives them more chance to do it in an unemotional way. But I'll stop there.
Really interesting. We could talk for longer on that. Fascinating to hear. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.